So, over the Christmas season, I was lucky enough to be gifted a copy of the brand new Choose Your Own Adventure superhero game, Dispatch, and let me tell you, I absolutely devoured this thing in record time. Now, I was super hyped to play the game for several reasons. For one, it comes to us courtesy of Ad Hoc Games, a group that, if you know anything about the gaming sphere, you'll know are actually made up of several former members of the old Telltale Games company, a group that pretty much made their name in the industry by making games just like this. Choose Your Own Adventure, X will remember that sort of thing. Telltale was, of course, pretty famous because some of their most famous games that they ever made just so happened to be adaptations of wildly popular comic books. You had multiple seasons of The Walking Dead, one very cult season of The Wolf Among Us, two excellent Batman games that, God, I still sit up at night wondering what that third one would have been, and that Guardians of the Galaxy game that I think a lot of people forget exists, period. Dispatch was pretty special, though, because it was them basically making their own original thing for the first time. And yes, I know, originally Dispatch was apparently pitched as a TV show, and it certainly feels it, but I digress. Another thing to keep in mind is that Dispatch was made in conjunction with the fine folk over at Critical Role, a group of famous and beloved nerdy voice actors who cornered the market on Dungeons & Dragons streaming before eventually spreading the love to a bunch of other media enterprises out there, including this one. So yeah, I had a pretty good feeling I was going to be in for a good time, but what really ended up taking me by surprise, as a comic reader, as someone who has pretty much dedicated their entire creative life to plunging the deeper meanings of superheroes and comic books, is just how much Dispatch really understood superhero storytelling more than just about any other freshman outing I can think of in recent memory. In order to properly explain what I'm talking about here, I am pretty much going to have to spoil the entire game, so if this seems like something you would be interested in, or if you've been waiting for it to come down in price, definitely hop on, check it out. I promise you will not be disappointed. Come back and watch the rest of the video later. So in the game proper, you assume the role of Robert Robertson III, the inheritor of the Mecha Man heroic mantle. Basically, think of him as a matchup of all the best parts of Iron Man, with a little Blue Beetle thrown in there too, to say nothing of his very alliterative Peter Parker-style name that I think would make even Stan Lee in his prime blush. Now, in the beginning of the game, Robert is attempting to avenge the death of his very famous but very emotionally distant father at the hands of a mysterious supervillain calling himself the Shroud. Here's the thing though, not only does Robert fail right out of the gate, he fails so hard he ends up losing his suit and arc reactor style power source, the Astral Pulse, within like the first 5 to 10 minutes. It's at his absolute lowest, with no other options left, Robert is forced to take a job at the Superhero Dispatch Network, thus the title of the game, when he is recruited by the much more famous and much more beloved Blonde Blazer. Now, I know what you might be thinking to yourself, geez, Joel, that doesn't really sound like a traditional superhero story. Well, that's why Dispatch is so smart. It understands that one of the greatest appeals of comic books has always been the power fantasy. So what Dispatch really is a beautiful inversion of the power fantasy. It gives you a little taste of what it means to be a hero in this world, lets you play around as Mecha Man for a minute, before eventually taking all that power away and forcing you to spend the rest of the game riding a desk and directing people with actual power. And make no mistake, Robert really needs the money too to rebuild himself, not just literally, but figuratively too. You see, he's the third in a long superhero line, but he is also, in the proud Marvel tradition, dirt poor, having bankrupted himself completely, just trying to keep his super advanced family suit up and running. It's a fascinating take on legacy heroes, if you ask me, and how sometimes the very things that make us feel closer to our families, to the ones we love, can also sadly end up becoming anchors around our necks. It also just feels wild to be dropped into such a fresh and new feeling superhero world that also manages to feel this absolutely lived in with this much already pre-existing history, but also such a wide breadth of super people. I shit you not, in this game we have not one, but two different heroes with animal heads. Actually, they're two different guys with two different kinds of animal heads. I know that probably sounds insane, but play the game and you'll know exactly what I mean. Making Robert's job all that much harder is the fact that he has been saddled with the famous Z Team, so named because they are dead last in the SDN rankings. Why? Well, they just so happen to be supervillains in the process of attempting to reform themselves as part of something called Project Phoenix. Think the Suicide Squad, but a little bit more corporate. Now, when you're not making your big dialogue choices, you're directing members of the Z Team to go out there in the field and save the day. You're going to have to learn everyone's strengths, their synergy, and figure out the game systems as they are introduced. Like, later on, they make it so you can't just throw your strongest teammate against every problem to brute force your way through it and expect to win every time. This is also just a really cool way to let you as the player experience being on a superhero team in a way that no other game has really managed to do before. In fact, a lot of games feel like they fail to properly capture what it means to be on a super team, short of like those Avengers Ultimate Alliance games, and like that other Guardians of the Galaxy game kind of had its own take on it where you played as every character at once. Dispatch does its own thing, and I really ended up appreciating it. Truth be told, early on in playing Dispatch, I actually thought I was really bad at the game, whiffing jobs that I thought I should very easily have managed to complete, and completing other jobs completely at random. I got so discouraged at one point I thought, man, should I just crack open a guide and see what I'm meant to do here? Only I was about halfway through the game and figured, you know what, I'm just gonna power through it, and if I get the bad ending, I'll just deal with it and maybe start a second playthrough. That choice would end up actually being very thematically important, so keep that in mind because we will circle back to that by the end, I promise. Character writing and especially design ethos are another incredibly strong mark in Dispatch's favor. It would have been really easy to make characters in this game lame stand-ins or XBs of pre-existing Marvel and DC characters, but they don't do that. Case in point, you got Flambe. He's the fire guy, but he's much deeper, much funnier, and much more interesting than he would be if he was just a straight-up pyro human torch-alike. Same goes for Prism, too. She has light power, she's a pop star, so you're thinking, oh, I bet they got a lot of Dazzler jokes to make at her expense, right? Nope, she's got her own unique things going on. These characters are informed by their powers, but they are not defined by their powers. This ideology extends to the rest of the cast, too, from a very depressed Superman-alike called Phenomaman, who we just so happened to meet during a very messy breakup in his life, to the manic pixie dream invisible girl with a dark past, voiced by Laura Bailey, that is Invisigal. Speaking of Invisigal, her and Blonde Blazer also end up filling this very fun Betty and Veronica, MJ and Gwen kind of role as, ooh, which character will you as the player choose to romance? Will you pick the safe, morally upstanding one, or will you pick the fun, dangerous one? And I mean, if I know my gamers, and I know myself, and I think I do, obviously, we picked the little mean one with the nose piercing and the pixie cut, right? Right, we did that? You gamers match my freak and I match yours? Right, I thought so. Now, this is also very much a game for adults, one that doesn't shy away from plenty of violence, and surprisingly plenty of nudity and sexuality too, something that I was not expecting in this type of story, but was pleasantly surprised to get all the same. And while it certainly has its more serious moments, I would say more than anything Dispatch is a comedy through and through. Robert is a Peter Parker-style quip machine who always has the perfect dry barb no matter which of the three actual dialogue choices you choose, and a good bulk of the game is just hanging out with your team as they bounce off each other. Really authentic, really amusing, really conversational banter kind of ends up being this game's major hallmark, and it's helped out a lot that the cast is primarily, as I said before, some of the video game industry's biggest, most beloved, most renowned veterans, but also a very interesting smattering of real-life streamers like Moist Critical and Jacksepticeye, as well as some very fun musicians like Thought Squad. I've actually listened to her on TikTok forever, and I could not believe that she was in the game, and I'm super stoked that she was not only in it, but she got 2 of her own songs in the soundtrack, so if you're not a fan, maybe you will be by the time everything is said and done. I think another reason I really ended up walking away with so much love and appreciation for this game is how they actually handle the parody side of things, mainly that the jokes themselves all come from a place of understanding. You can tell these are people that like and get the material. It's much closer to, say, something like Venture Brothers than maybe something a little bit angrier, something with a bit more of, an axe to grind with the genre, like the Boys comics, or maybe even that one episode of Rick and Morty, the one I'm talking about, the Vindicators one, where you could tell they didn't really have anything to say, so they just kind of trail off by the end. As you can tell, I have a lot of reasons to really like this game and a lot of reasons to really recommend it, but if you twisted my arm and forced me to tell you the thing I like the most, it would probably be the game's big bad, Shroud. He's actually a mystery for the most part of the 8-episode run. We don't even hear him speak until very, very late. You see, Shroud used to actually be a hero, a member of the Brave Brigade, no less, the very same team as Robert's dad, the second Mecha Man. Unlike the Robertsons, who honed their physicality as well as made use of their mecha suits to help in their superhero endeavors, Shroud went the other way completely. He turned himself into a cyborg, slowly but surely eroding his own humanity in exchange for mechanical excellence. Shroud used his considerable scientific knowledge to help Robert Sr. in creating the original Astral Pulse, which would also end up being the very thing that led to them falling out. You see, Robert Sr., who time and time again is shown to not exactly be the best dude, contested who was really responsible for the Pulse's creation and used his pull in the Brave Brigade to make sure that Elliot was never actually officially voted in. It was after that, in a bout of madness, Shroud shot and killed Robert Sr. with his own revolver. In a rather interesting bit of continuity, the story Shroud tells Robert Jr. in the game actually conflicts with the story as it is told in the pages of one of the Dispatch tie-in comic books, and honestly, I actually kind of enjoy that there's a little bit of a discrepancy there, kind of a, who actually told the truth here, I wonder. The next time Elliot showed up, he had fully embraced the Shroud identity, complete with what can only be described as a Doctor Doom drip. His mask wasn't just a nice piece of decoration, too, it was actually a highly advanced piece of technology that crunched numbers and ran algorithms for this guy, basically allowing him to see 3 seconds into the future, which doesn't seem like a lot until you actually end up using it. Shroud would also use his scientific know-how to found the Red Ring Gang, a group of supervillains who had their powers altered or otherwise enhanced by Shroud's advanced cybernetic technology that he could use to control them whenever he wanted. And if you're starting to see a dichotomy here between how Robert and the Z-Team operate and how Shroud operates, you absolutely should. One motivates people through friendship and understanding, the other one motivates them through coercion and blackmail. Oh, but that's not even the best part. The best part, the thing I love the most, is that Shroud's big villainous plan involves him wanting to steal the Astral Pulse so he can use its power to do more advanced calculations, essentially allowing him to see into the future for real. Why is Shroud so obsessed with seeing the future, you might be wondering? Well, it's because he used to be a superhero, and now he thinks that the only way to stop bad things from ever happening is if he knows what's gonna happen before it happens, which, when we take all of that together, we end up realizing, oh man, Shroud just isn't a dark mirror to Robert and the Robertson family. Shroud is also a biting commentary on people who play Telltale games wrong, essentially looking up the guide so they can never be wrong, cheating themselves out of the actual journey and making choices in the moment. While in his big hero speech, Robert very valiantly says that he doesn't know what's going to happen next, that he is just making things up as they go along because, hey, that's what heroes do. Being a good hero isn't about always being right, it's about trying to do what's right in the moment. This really did end up being one of those wonderful games as art, gameplay as storytelling type things that you don't get all the time, but when you do, is what makes video games such a compelling art form. Hell, before the credits roll, the game is even brave enough to weigh in on probably one of the most hot-button issues in superhero-dom, and that is, should superheroes kill their villains? Remember, this is a game that keeps track of every choice you make, and every choice that other players are making. Early on, a character asks you your view on this subject, and then gives you the choice at the end, telling you straight up if you stuck by your word, or if the experience changed the way you feel. And again, I think that's just another fundamental understanding of comic books as power fantasy. It's not just would you be strong enough to bend metal with your bare hands, but also would you be strong enough to live by a moral code, to show mercy to someone who might not actually even deserve it. And yeah, that pretty much clinched it for me. Dispatch ended up not only really getting superhero stories and superhero storytelling as far as I'm concerned, but it ended up offering one of the most enjoyable and engrossing new superhero stories I've had the luxury of enjoying pretty much all last year. I liked it so much I had to make a video about it. I'm so glad other people seem to enjoy it as much as I did, and I'm happy to know that Critical Role and Ad Hoc want this to be a brand new franchise with a new season hopefully coming sooner rather than later.